Morning, all of you students out there. This is the fourth edition of what the Prem Jain Memorial Trust is doing as part of this series for the World Green Building Week. What is amazing is, and you can check this out on the websites, on the Google, that there are about 60 countries across the world which are celebrating this week today. And the multiple impact of such things on young minds, young professionals, particularly in India, is going to be staggering, is my hope and belief. The Indian Green Building Council has also been doing some work. There are 3 or 4. We will have Payal Jain, the founder trustee of the Prem Jain Memorial Trust, who will be speaking just after this. And then we have another distinguished guest, the head of urban planning from the NITE School of Architecture in Bangalore, Dr. Gayatri Aditya. Thank you, Dr. Gayatri. Welcome to the show. We have this distinguished architect, a person who many of you know in any case, and who needs barely anything to be talked upon as introduction. Architect Ashok Lal, who has been for 35, 40 years now, pushing the envelope on design and architecture. Welcome to all of you, and to Sandeep Narang, who has been the champion for this series this week. Payal Jain, can I request you to see if you take over and tell us a little about this week's event, about the Memorial Trust itself, and of course, if possible, on the Indian Green Building Council of the CII.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Happy to be here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Ashokji. Thank you very much for agreeing to be a part of this session. Thank you, Dr. Hariharan, for constantly being with us, for driving the Prem Jain Memorial Trust through the last 2 years. Thank you, Gayatri, the students of NITE, Sandeep Narang, and my dear students. Prem Jain Memorial Trust was founded in the memory of my dearest father, Dr. Prem Jain, with the mission to carry on his love for Mother Nature and lifelong commitment to creating a greener earth. He had a very special connection to students of all ages and believed that sustainability must become a way of life at an early age for it to bring true change to our beautiful planet. Upon returning to India in the early 70s, he became a silent crusader in greening his beloved Janani Janmabhoomi, as he called it, at a time when green was only a color for most people. He was also fondly known as father of green buildings in India, and was instrumental in single-handedly creating a green Bharat. His vision was that India should become a global leader, the Jagat Guru, and every Indian to contribute 1 square foot of green to the country. For those of you who didn't know him, I would like to share something personal. He lived on the path of dharma, justice, integrity, truth, and humility. Everything he did was with purpose and intention, commitment, dedication, kindness, compassion, and love. This is what made him special to all those who were attached to him, who worked for him, who worked with him, studied from him, or associated with him. And of course, to his family and extended family. He lived with the greatest pride for his mother and his motherland, both of whom he worshipped. His lifelong commitment can best be expressed in words of Guru Nanak Dev Rabindranath Tagore, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where words come from the depths of truth, where the mind is led forward into the heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Dr. Jain took over chairmanship of Indian Green Building Council in 2007 and set his sights high on achieving 1 billion square feet. The population of India at that point was 1 billion, and hence 1 billion square feet. The targeted year was 2012, but it was achieved with the passion and dedication of the IGBC family and of all of the people who are here today in 2012. India crossed, then we set the next benchmark of 2 billion for 2015, but that was crossed in 2014. By 2018, we had hit 5.7 billion square feet. And I know the last Congress was about 7 billion square feet, and I think it goes on and on and on. We continue on that path. Dr. Jain's love affair with Indian Green Building Council started way back in 2003, when he designed the Godrej Green Business Center, which got the highest LEED Platinum rating and became the world's greenest building in 2004. After that followed 60 Platinum Awards, 40 Gold Awards, and many more. The Indian Green Building Council is part of the Confederation of Indian Industries and was formed in the year 2001 with a vision to enable a sustainable built environment for all and facilitate India to be one of the global leaders in the sustainable built environment by 2025. As you all must know, IGBC is responsible for developing new green building ratings, certification services, green building training programs, and they work closely with state governments, central governments, other world green building councils, bilateral and multilateral agencies across the world. Finally, I would just like to say a big thank you to Dr. Hariharan for setting us on this path of web sessions of the virtual world, the new learning we have all had in the last 5 months. Ashokji for being here, thank you. The IGBC family, IGBC student chapters, Sustain and Save, who are our partners here, Nitya School of Architecture, Sandeep Narang, whose brainchild this is, without whom we wouldn't be here, the PJMT board, trustees, and all the board of governors, and the whole team, the back-end team, which makes every one of these sessions happen. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. And I'll give back to you, Dr. Hariharan. Thank you. You are on mute, I think, Doctor.
I was just saying, knowledge is free and words come from the depths of truth. He was, from your early days, I'm sure you recall times when he would talk to you about Gurudev. Is there any such vignette that you want to share with us as a child or later in life when when he came up with something or the other that in his life he related to Gurudev of? Before I hand the mic over to Gayatri.
Well, I have grown up hearing poetry of Tagore all my life. I mean, I have grown up on Gitanjali and, each one, especially Gitanjali was one of his favorites. I still have the entire set of books. So yes, so I grew up on classical music, art and poetry.
Thanks to your mother, of course. Yeah.
Yes, thanks to my mother. She is here, in fact, with us. She has been attending every session diligently.
Absolutely.
And she's here today also.
Right. That's to all of you, ladies and gentlemen out there, also all you youngsters, here is a family. There's a combination of harmony of some extraordinary kind between the father and the mother that Payal is now talking about. There you are, Gayatri Aditya. Can I request you to say on behalf of the NITE group of institutions in Bangalore and Mangalore, the engineering colleges, the School of Architecture, the Department of Urban Planning that you head, and the Department of Architecture that Sanjoy heads, as well as those institutions in Mangalore. Welcome once again. Over to you, Gayatri.
Thank you so much, sir. A very good evening to all the prominent personalities, distinguished friends from academia, industry peers, and dear students. A hearty welcome to one and all. It gives us an immense pleasure to be part of the World Green Building Week by Prem Jain Memorial Trust in association with IGBC and so many colleges across India. Our association with PGMT started from the Living Building Series 1 through Dr. Hariharan, so sometime way back during the lockdown. We appreciate this efforts put in by PJMT and IGBC for making this World Green Building Week happen. We would like to thank them for giving us this opportunity to be part of this event. NITE School of Architecture, Planning and Design, we quickly call it as NITE SAPD, would be happy to associate and collaborate with all their future endeavors in theme of green and sustainable buildings, and would continue support to knit a strong learning ecosystem. We at NITE School of Architecture, Planning and Design, Bangalore, are always thrilled to associate with initiatives that have a vision like this. Right from our inception in 2016, we have focused on doing our bit to promote and facilitate awareness about sustainability. We do our best to give our students a complete understanding of the social, economic, and environmental implications of going green. We recently have a students chapter of IGBC, which keeps the students well connected to the developments. And we recently hosted an event last year, Bigathon, in association with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, USA, to launch the Building Innovation Guide for high performance, energy efficient buildings in India, which is expected to innovate the building infrastructure. So today on day 4, we are looking at the DNA of affordable and sustainable housing. We are living in a time where optimizing land and promoting mixed use could be the key solution to many issues. The relevance of an effective planning process that ensures effective decision making, appropriate allocation of resources, and vision for the future is something we as an institution has always believed in. It was as a result of this that we became the first institution in Karnataka to introduce the 4-year B-Plan degree program in 2017. Home is the foundation of our lives, and everyone deserves to have adequate, affordable housing. Planned sustainable urbanization will have to be by default and not by choice. Increasing urbanization, a renewed focus on the sector by the government, and raising income and aspirations are all key demand drivers in the affordable housing story. This is an issue that can be rightly handled by someone who firmly believes that architecture should not only serve the building design solution, but should focus on larger benefits. With this, I'd like to wholeheartedly welcome Dr. Architect Ashok B. Lal. Sir is currently based in Delhi and has been doing remarkable work in low energy and sustainable architecture. Sir, I've heard about you a lot from your student Reshma Singh when she was my host mentor during my postdoctoral stint at LBNL. And it's a pleasant surprise today to get an opportunity to introduce you. Architect Ashok completed his degree in Architecture and Fine Arts from the University of Cambridge, UK, and then undertook further studies at Architectural Association London. In almost all his projects and aesthetics, aesthetic quality itself of the building is derived from the principles of sustainable design. The use of natural materials, minimal use of glass, interesting shading devices, and integration of sheltered courtyard spaces. For instance, the development of Alternatives World Headquarters located in New Delhi is one of the first buildings in India that aims at zero emissions. The building is best described as the living ecosystem, a fine balance of natural and man-made processes employing environment-friendly energy, material, and water management methods. I would now request him to tell us more about his body of work and his views on affordable housing. Thank you.
What we will do is this, we are at 5:13, Ashok. What I would request you to do is to get ahead with your presentation. I'm going by the flow of whatever thoughts and the sequence just now. Yeah. And you take your 30, 35 minutes, whatever. Yeah. I will reserve some of my thoughts to after you have spoken. And all of you students out there, I will only say this to you all. That it's important that you listen to Ashok for not just the design aspects of, of affordable housing that he will obviously be speaking about. He is one of those rare few architects that I have personally known for 20 plus years now, who always blends the economics at the larger level. I'm not just talking about the finances of a project. And he's constantly looking at the political economy too, when he is devising anything as a plan. So keep this in mind when you listen to Ashok Lal. And after that, I will share some thoughts with you in the hope that as leaders of the future, that you will be able to drive a few directions, and also in the hope that some of the leaders of the Indian Green Building Council, the IGBC, which is partnering this event, are listening to us here today. Over to you, Ashok. Thank you once again for being with us. We are all ears now. Yeah.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Gayatri. Thank you, Payal. I'm afraid I'm getting a little emotional. Remembering Dr. Jain. I think I had the amazing fortune of perhaps being one of his earliest students after he returned from America and was working with Mr. Stein. Because I used to have to sit across the table from him while I was trying to sort out certain design issues. And I would just download a whole lot of yarn from him. And, you know, frequently at lunchtime and other times too. And I must say the principles of his particular discipline, I learned directly from him, from no book, from no other text. I learned everything from him, and it was absolutely fantastic. So let me just say thank you, Dr. Jain, wherever you are. And you've given us a great deal. So let me now share my screen and move on with my business. Let's see if it works. Share. Are we there? Have you got my screen?
Yes, we can see you. It's on a full view, so you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I understand that we have people from planning, we have people who might be engineers, and we also have architects, young architects, and students of architecture who are participating in this talk. And as you can see from this title, it's called the DNA of low carbon, resource efficient, affordable housing. What I'm presenting to you today is based on some research that our office had the good fortune of doing along with Green Technology Solutions Private Limited, something that was funded by the Swiss government in the context of Rajkot in Gujarat. And our findings from this research are extremely important. So I want you to now patiently to sort of take you through this research and also emphasize this, that in our professional journeys, we are not merely practicing professionals, plying our trade of knowledge in the professional world. We are also people who must constantly reinvent ourselves by application of thought and imagination, and researching deeply into the area of work where we are engaged. It is only when we do that that we progress as a profession, as a people who can truly contribute to development. If we don't do that and we step back and simply ply our trade, if that's all we do, then we are doing no more than advancing or turning around some money and advancing some businesses, but we are not really working in the interest of greater development. So let me move the slides along. And it seems that there is some issue with this. Here it comes. Do you know that the government of India is a signatory to the Paris Agreement on Climate Change? And the government of India is also a signatory to following the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we have said and announced to the world is that, you know, we are going to find a path of progress and development which is consistent with and based on the principles of sustainability. That we are not going to do anything that should go against that principle. But I'm very sorry to say that if we look around ourselves, in our cities, in our worlds, and what's happening around us in the built environment, I have a strong feeling that we are not honoring this commitment. And so I want to bring all of us back to the value of this commitment. So the project that we are presenting, it's a research project, is to achieve affordable housing for all, which is also a kind of a commitment. But it should be in tune with Sustainable Development Goals and the climate change agenda. Well, you know, these are the 4 sustainable development goals that are particularly important for us. The first one is a socio-economic one, and that is where affordable housing becomes a centerpiece of this intention. It says reduce inequalities. It means that you have to provide affordable homes at locations where you can find employment and economic opportunity, and with access to social amenities and to public transport. That is where we should be locating homes for everyone. The next one is about sustainable cities and communities. And what it says is that livelihoods in an inclusive economy with energy equity, that means everybody should be able to get electricity supply, energy equity. Environmental security means that you should be able to conserve water, keep the air pure, be able to responsibly recycle your waste, enhance public spaces which are shared by everybody, and you should be able to assure the availability of clean water and clean air for all times to come. That's the way we should be developing our cities. The next one is about responsible consumption and responsible production. As consumers, if we choose to consume low carbon and resource efficient ways of building, and if we choose to build using such technologies, then we are moving in the right direction. But if we choose to do the opposite, build with stuff which is high carbon, not at all resource efficient, and if that is what we demand by our culture and our tastes, then we are moving away from this sustainable development goal. And the last one, of course, is the overarching goal, which is called climate action. And this is to build in robustness against infrastructure failure. That means that, you know, sometimes bijli will go, sometimes water will go, sometimes we'll have drought. There can be all kinds of events like this pandemic that we are going through right now, where we'll have to, you know, go down to the basics and manage our life adequately, survive the setback. We have to design with that in mind. And it also means that the outdoors should be places which are livable. They should be shaded. And then you must intensify rainwater harvesting and water efficiency, because that's going to be a fundamental resource that's going to be stressed because of the process of urbanization. And very, very important, and I can't think of a bigger message to everybody, is that please put the motor vehicle where it belongs. Don't let it enter every lane, every cranny, every garden, every space, and take over the city. That's the last thing you want it to do. So these are the 4 major sustainable development goals. Well, I hardly need to tell you that urban populations are growing and will continue to grow, because that's the way the economy of the nation will move. Even though I think the right strategy would be to develop the small and medium-sized towns more rapidly, and not to focus so much on the big cities, because the big cities are proving to be inherently less sustainable. And the smaller towns and cities are showing that they can cope with the rise in population and also with the process of urbanization in much more livable, affordable ways. And where is this happening, this move to the city? It's happening in these 5 states, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Punjab. These are the areas where the industrial development and services in cities is growing rapidly. But this is also a message to say that this kind of growth should happen in other states also. Now let me move to this very important theoretical statement. On the left is a yin-yang diagram you can see. It's saying that affordability and sustainability are integral and mutually supportive. It is a misconception that if you go for sustainable design, it's going to be more expensive and therefore not affordable. That is true only when you are looking at making a 5-star hotel which is already consuming so much water and energy. And you're trying to now reduce how much water and energy it consumes by putting in all kinds of gizmos to reduce its consumption. At that end, yes, it will cost you more. But if you're talking about simple homes, the way most of us live across the country, actually move in the sustainable direction, you'll find it becomes more affordable to begin with and also in the long term. On the right is a theoretical diagram which says that if we say that there's one objective, which is affordability, there's no point in finding solutions which I just don't have the money for. I can't be borrowing from the rest of the world all the time. I have to be able to afford a reasonable solution today within my income limits. And that has to do with cost and the location of home. The location of home often determines the cost. And if the land cost is an issue because the location is advantageous for me to live in, then this is a policy issue which our planners and our ministries and our state departments have to address, because if you're talking about affordable housing without making land affordable, you're actually not talking about affordable housing. So affordability is a very important issue. The other important issue is that you must be efficient in resource consumption, whether it is energy consumption in the long run, because that's to do with climate change also, and also the consumption of land. It's expensive to acquire and to develop land. So you must be, resource efficient in the utilization of this. And also the materials and transportation that your city engenders, what it demands, should principally be low carbon. If you keep these three objectives and you overlap them, there will be an area that they share in common. And it is where they overlap, that is where the solutions for affordable housing lie. This is a very important theoretical diagram. So we need to find those solutions that lie at the intersection of the three circles. Now in our research work, what we did was we just looked at what are the current trends of building. And we find that there are, in the cities by and large, there are some places where people are building 4-story buildings for homes. They're building taller buildings, about 8 stories high. And then some places, in some cities, they are even building much taller, 12, 14, 20 stories high. And they also think at the same time that this is the only way to go, and they think it will be affordable. So what we said was, well, that seems to be like an arithmetic solution. Can we not look at it more systematically? Let us look at real projects and evaluate them. So we went to Rajkot and we saw the kind of construction that was going on. We actually got hard data from the projects that are already being built or have been built. Some were low rise, some were medium rise, some were high rise. And we said, okay, we evaluate the potential of low carbon, resource efficient, affordable housing on various parameters over these three scales or types of building. And these are the projects that we selected from within the city of Rajkot. So it's not hypothetical. This is real data. That's the important point to recognize here. Now, the first thing we looked at is the embodied energy efficiency of building. That means how much carbon dioxide you emit per square meter of usable housing space that you provide. how much carbon dioxide you emit. So let's not look at the specifics of the numbers, but let us look at them comparatively. You have 233 units that are consumed per square meter in a low-rise building, G+3. When that goes up to G+7 or still +7, you are now consuming 251 units. In other words, you are emitting 251 units of carbon dioxide. And if you go taller still, see the jump? You go up and start consuming 310 units. So now even when you give the same walling material, the taller buildings have greater CO2 emissions because of the high quantity of steel and cement that you're using in them. And as you go from low rise to mid rise to high rise, you jump by 15% and then eventually to 35% embodied energy. So, well, that is the structural part of it. But even in the building materials, especially walling materials, there are now options that are available where low embodied energy materials can be brought in for walling. But this is to say that if we are going to build a large number of homes across the country, and they say that we have yet to build, we have not even built 25% of our requirement of homes. So we have yet to build 75% of our homes in the next 2 decades. If that much you're going to build in 2 decades, and in the construction itself, you're going to incur 35% more carbon dioxide emissions simply because you've chosen to go high rise, then are you honoring your sustainable development goals? Are you honoring your climate change promise, your climate fighting promise? You're not, you're going away from it. So here's a fundamental error in policy today, which we discovered in this project, only on account of embodied energy. But then you live in buildings and the buildings will last for 50 to 70 years. And then you must consider the operational energy efficiency of buildings. Now, what is it that you consume in the buildings? Where is the difference between low rise, mid rise, and high rise? It's in the lifts and pumps principally, in the common spaces and the lifts and pumps. That's where the difference occurs. So if you've got a 4-story high building, no lift, hardly a pump, right? The main municipal supply gives you sufficient pressure to rise up to the top of the building. The moment you go mid-rise, you have to install lift, you have to install pumps. You go high-rise, even more so. And you can see the kilowatt hours per dwelling units that you're consuming. Just again, compare the numbers, just compare the numbers. From 59 to 278, 5 times more. So if you're building high-rise, are you doing the right thing by climate change? By incurring much more energy to just live in those buildings, to go up and down? Obviously not. And of course, all of this costs. Even the construction cost goes up as you go higher. But maintenance cost is a very significant thing. Now, this is real calculation. Just look at the difference. 4-story high buildings, very easy to maintain, hardly any mechanical equipment, easy to maintain the outside face of the building, easy to replace windows if you have to do that. Mid-rise, more electromechanical equipment, firefighting equipment has now come in. That's a cost. Lifts have to be replaced every 10 years by law. High-rise buildings, even worse. And imagine having to service the outer surface of the high-rise building when it's beginning to crumble. Especially those things that people are now building with all concrete. It's going to crumble in 15 years, in 20 years. How are you going to maintain it? It's going to cost you a bomb. It's going to cost you a bomb. So this is what we are seeing here. This is research. And you know, this one called rooftop solar potential. I tell you, this was a real find in this research work, real find. What we see is that 80% of the energy requirement in a low-rise residential building can be met by rooftop solar energy for simple living, not air conditioned. So low-rise buildings have now the potential of net zero due to the better rooftop area to electricity demand ratio. Now, when you go to mid-rise, that ratio or that potential has dropped to 47%. It was 83% when we had four-story, five-story. You go to mid-rise, you're already down to 47%. You go to high-rise, of course you'll come down to 31%. But there's another price to pay. Whereas the low-rise building clears the treetop and the roof has access to the sky and the sun. It can capture all the energy that's available from the sun. The moment you go taller, well, you start overshadowing your neighbor. The taller buildings will overshadow the other neighbor, and so on and so forth. So you suffer on two accounts. You're reducing the rooftop solar potential, and you're also denying rooftop solar potential to your neighbors who are only 4 or 5 stories high. So here's another very important finding from a planning point of view. If we are talking about solar cities in the future, this is something to be remembered. Once again, let me emphasize, this is pure empirical research. Well, this is something that we've all done in our climatology courses, but no harm in repeating a few things. It's like if you're designing a building, you must design it for thermal comfort. Why must you design it for thermal comfort? You must design it for thermal comfort because if our incomes grow, and if we are already enjoying air-conditioned comfort in our motor cars, or in the cinema, or in the restaurant, or in the train, we expect to get better comfort in our homes. And very soon, if we can afford it, we will start putting in air conditioners, as we have started doing. And in fact, if you look at the statistics of the growth in split unit air conditioning trade across India, it is growing. The graph looks like the hockey curve of climate change. You know, it's going very steeply up. Now, air conditioning is very highly consumptive of electricity. It is the largest complement of CO2 emissions because of energy consumption in our buildings. So we have to design our buildings in such a way, our homes in such a way, that the demand for air conditioning, even if it is there, is minimized, so that you install smaller units and you use them for less time. And there are simple things that you have to do, all right? So you have to reduce the size of glass, you have to reduce the size of windows, enough for ventilation, enough for daylight, but not more than that. I've been seeing on the internet so many examples and lifestyle statements about views and transparency and modernity. Look at this and look at what the residents actually have to suffer. They realize that they got it wrong. And you know what? It's a very sad thing. When you ask the residents, you know, what's the problem? Oh, they said, bahut garmi hai. It's so hot, you know what to do? They don't blame the designer. They don't blame the developer. They don't blame the architect. Actually, that's where the blame lies. It lies with the developer and the architect, leading you up the wrong path and then making you suffer. That's what's happening. So you must reduce the size of windows, shade them well, and preferably use external movable shading systems. And there are simple ways of doing this. Many examples of how you can do it. You know, just provide a frame. It's very interesting. This window on the right-hand side that you see here, this has been done in a low-cost housing project in Rajkot, where they decided to be very sustainable. And they actually found that when it is pleasant and nice outside, you open the window. And when it is blazing hot and sunny outside, you shut the window. So, and it's very bright outside. So in fact, the lower part of the window shutter is opaque. Only the upper part is transparent. And so you get enough light when you shut the window during the blazing hot part of the day. And when it is pleasant, you open the window, you get more light and you get good ventilation. Very clever, simple, affordable design there. And of course, the roof has to be well insulated and it must have a reflective surface. That's extremely important. I don't know why builders say, oh, it costs more. As if the life of those people living on the top floor is less valuable. How the hell can you ever say that? What makes you even think like this? I can't believe it. And what makes us designers, I don't know, unki minnat karte hain. Please listen to us. No, it doesn't cost more. I said, if it costs more, it's the right thing to do. The people living under the roof deserve the same level of comfort as those living below them. And you have to do a right kind of roof for anybody to live, no matter how low cost the solution. It just has to be done. And again, in this Rajkot project, they did it. And you can measure how effective it is. Insulated walls and properly done roofs. Here's another one. Evenings are often pleasant, right? There are many seasons where it is pleasant outside. First, of course, you must take care of pollution. If you've taken care of pollution, it's pleasant outside, it's very nice. You open the window. Why do you open the window? Because you want the benefit of the cool air outside. But how will the cool air go through your house? Unless it can go through and across your house. And you must design for cross ventilation. And a lot of builders, once again, they will refuse to design for cross ventilation because they say that, residents are very worried about security and they don't want this and they want privacy and they want this. Boy, that is a design problem. Cross ventilation is a must and we have to find solutions for that. And they exist. Okay, now let's move on to something else, which is very important. When your homes are small, it doesn't mean that your families are small. When your homes are small, your families are just as big, 4, 5, 6 people in a home. And you get very crowded in. Just to think that all of us between the age of 8 or 6 and 22 will spend time inside the house. No way. We'll be running around outside. We'll be meeting our friends. We'll be going outside. That little room is not good enough for us. It won't do. We have to go out. So what it suggests is that for affordable housing, outdoor spaces, terraces, balconies, close to the homes are extremely important. They are part of the making of the home. The outdoor livability is as much a part of provision of the home. And that's extremely important. Of course, when you have small homes, you have only 6 meters per person. And when you have large homes like 105 square meters, you have 23 meters per person. Yes, then it's okay. You can be one room, you can have the TV, another room, you can have the computers, and you can have an exercise machine somewhere else. But if you're talking about small homes, 25 to 50 square meters, no, you'll need space outside. You have to give complementary open spaces outside. And once again, what it shows is that if you build 4 stories high, where the street is accessible, you can have a few balconies, and the rooftop is a replacement of the ground that you can use. And above the rooftop, you can build a frame where the solar panels can come in the future. So once again, the livability of a 4-story high building is much greater than a taller building. The livability, sheer livability, especially for small homes. Economics. Well, as you go taller, the structure gets heavier, more space is given to staircases and lifts, and therefore it costs you more to provide the same amount of livable space as you go taller and taller. This is common sense. But now when you do a summary of it all, What do you say? Here are the criteria that we looked at when we compared the 3 types of building. All in the name of affordable housing, mind you. All these 3 types of building are in the name of affordable housing. Open area per person, which gives you most? The low-rise building. Embodied energy efficiency, low-rise is the clear winner. Operational energy, low-rise is the clear winner. Solar roof potential, extremely important. Low-rise is the clear winner. Carpet area per built-up area, low-rise again. Construction cost, affordability, low-rise. Quick time in construction, low-rise. Maintenance affordability, low-rise. And what happens if you have a disaster? The Bijli fails and you have to go down to fetch the water. Would you live in a 4-story building or a 10-story building on the top floor? Where would you like to live? What if there's a fire? What if there's an earthquake? Which do you think is the more resilient form of living? The 4-story, compact, high-density form of living is the resilient city. That is the resilient city. And the research establishes it without any doubt whatsoever. Planners, please listen. And you can extend the argument to the neighborhood level. I'll now go through this a little bit more quickly, because we also found that if you did have some parking space, which you must deal with in a different sort of way at a planning level, the provision of motor car and mobility, etc., at a planning level, tuck it under the building, leave the open ground as soft ground as much as possible. And don't waste land in setbacks. The wider the street, the wider the setback. What the hell for? That's not what makes streets. Streets are pavements and shops. Streets are life on the street. Reduce that front margin. Reduce the requirement of fire tenders asking for 6, 7, 8 meters width to go around every single building. Develop some other ways of finding, fire safety, especially if you've got 4, 5 stories high. Make it simple. Gain more land through your planning problem, through your planning rules. Present planning therefore reduce the potential of high density and increase the cost of densification. And of course, you mentioned this earlier, mixed use and pedestrian friendliness. Even today, mixed use is not being accepted in many parts of the country. It is the natural consequence of natural city life. We've seen it through the ages. We've seen it across the world. We are stuck to something that was developed in Great Britain in the 1950s, the segregation of uses. We're stuck to it for no good reason. And then we penalize people who live according to the nature of the city. You say, no, this is not allowed here. No, this is not allowed here. Instead of finding a via media where you allow a certain amount of mixed use in a structured manner. So you have the shops that face the street and homes that face the courtyard or the garden. A simple way of achieving it. Here's another bogey. This is the arithmetic calculation which says that if land is very costly, you have to go high rise. Well, we did some surveys and we actually found that when you go high rise or you permit high rise, FSI goes up, the cost of land goes up in the free market. The cost of land has gone up, the cost of construction has gone up, affordability has come down. CO2 emissions have gone up. And actually, many costs go up. And most importantly, you thought that it is a clear arithmetic progression that if you double the FSI, you'll get double the number of families living there. Actually, it doesn't work out like that. The curve tends to flatten as you go higher rise because there has to be distance between buildings and many other provisions also have to be made. And therefore, at the end of the day, you don't actually get the gain that you're looking for. So I think this is another way of studying this whole relationship between low rise, mid rise, and high rise. And I think this is well-established principles in urban planning, but I'm afraid, I don't know why, our master plans, our urban planners, our urban ministries, urban management ministries don't take these principles seriously. You have to locate the maximum affordable housing within 500 meters of mass transit. They have to be within 200 meters from major roads where they can catch public transport. You have to reserve and find lands for affordable housing in those locations. And you have to, by that manner, by encouraging people to use more public transport, I would say that even after the COVID experience, where public transport has become a problem because you cannot have too many people sitting close together when there is rife infection, I believe that you will be getting over that and will be finding ways of making public transport once again efficient and affordable, and moving away from private motorized vehicles as much as possible, including the two-wheeler. And so this is the direction that we have to move in. And this way of planning of affordable housing serves the first objective of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is to say that you have to develop for equity, for giving those who are the poorest set in your society, amongst your community, of your citizens, the quickest route to integration in the progress of your city. It is the quickest economic integration and progress for the new migrant and the young aspirant who's coming to the city if they are properly located close to transportation infrastructure where they can avail public transport and close to places of employment and the city infrastructure. Walkability is a must. Gosh, to find a bus stop from certain streets, I have to go around the whole block, travel long distances. Planning regulations allow pedestrian routes crisscrossing through large properties. This must be law. Despite the concerns for security and all that, I think it's really a design issue. And if you have better walkability, you will have less dependence on motorized transport. Simply because it is inconvenient to reach a close-by destination, there's a tendency for me to jump onto my two-wheeler and go around the block to just buy some vegetables or shampoo or whatever it may be, or medicines. But this network needs to be incorporated in the cities as the first principle. Okay, we did make some recommendations to the government of Gujarat, but I'm afraid nobody is taking it as seriously as they should. And it's my appeal to all our audience that this is the burning issue of urbanization and urban development. This is the DNA. The DNA is densities of up to 400 dwelling units per hectare, open space per dwelling unit of 15 square meters, construction costs which are very moderate, high solar potential, and much less carbon dioxide emissions compared to the high-rise situation or high-rise option. Quicker time to build. And also, because your projects are smaller grain, relatively smaller, many more small contractors can participate in the economic activity of building. Today, unfortunately, at the top of our government, there is a belief that the big machine that will come from Turkey or Mexico or Singapore or somewhere will produce millions of homes quickly and fast. And that is how we'll provide affordable housing. I tell you, that's not only not going to provide affordable housing, it's going to provide expensive housing. Not only is it not going to provide, is it going to provide expensive housing, which should not be truly affordable, it's going to suck money to the top of the income pyramid without distributing money to all those who today, because of COVID, are unemployed and looking for work immediately. So this is the DNA for a sustainable urban future. Low rise, high density. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashok. Well, First, I will say thank you to the Institute of Infrastructure in Ahmedabad, all the partners, the Axis Institute of Technology and Management, Kanpur, the APJ Institute of Technology in Greater Noida, Sri Sri University in Cuttack, who had this hosted yesterday, the KIT Group of Institutions, Ghaziabad, of course, and the NITIS School of Architecture, which is here today, the RIC School of Built Environment, which is coming up tomorrow. Look, you heard architect Ashok Lal. No high rise, low rise can actually become energy neutral or can facilitate being energy neutral. Each star overshadows the other, and so there isn't sunlight that really falls on the ground. You must go to Mongkok in Hong Kong, and you can't get more than 8 minutes of sunlight on the ground because of the stars that are chock-a-block. Air conditioning is high on energy, he says, but let me also tell you that some recent things that we've been doing out here in Bangalore suggest clearly that ACs today in Bangalore have a population of 1,200 million TRs or ton refrigerants. Every 100 TR, just 100 TR for a building of, let's say, about 8 lakh square feet of a mall or some such thing that you want to go to as youngsters, consumes about 70,000 liters per day if it's a water-cooled chiller plant. And every third day, it needs about 30,000 liters more. That's 100,000 liters that you've spent, 70,000 into 3 plus another 30,000 liters that you've spent every 3 days, shall we say, in a centrally air-conditioned building of no more than 8 lakh square feet. A city like Bangalore today has about 700 million square feet of centrally air-conditioned buildings. Keep that in mind. If you have to go high-rise, you know the challenges that architect Ashok Lal also pointed out. I will do one thing, since we are already at about 3 to 6. I'm not going to actually tell you of all the things that I really wanted to share today, but as an extension to what he spoke about today, and to reflections of Ashok Lal that I've heard in the past, I have the following to offer to you all as youngsters, who I hope will do more in this decade and the decade to come, when you will be leaders, shaping architecture of this country. I know Mrs. Renu Jain is listening to us all. I know she's had her moments of life when she has seen her husband shaping things for this country, for many of the buildings he worked from the early 1960s or the mid 60s, when she came into his home, shall we say, in a sense. The challenge before India in the 1970s, as Dr. Jain himself has admitted many times in person, as well as in that wonderful set of reflections he put down in that book called The Path of Green. And many of you should look at it. There is a link that is available, I think, at the Prem Jain Memorial Trust.com website. Please look at it and see if you can read what he said in great humility. Several times he admits in some of the sections that he went wrong, that he didn't think that, India would make the sort of mistakes that it did in the 1970s and the 80s, or how he got certain things wrong when it came to the decisions he made on CFM to tonnage and so on. Remember another thing when you're talking about homes and affordable homes, like Ashok Lal told us about or talked to you about today. You are no more than about 250 million families in India. You forget about the larger numbers of some 1,400 million people and all that. 250 million families is all that we are. About 20 to 25 million of these families have homes with permanent roofs, like the ones you and I have got. In the world, we need about 1,000 million homes, but when it comes to India, we don't need any more than about 50 million homes or houses, shall we say, for people with incomes of less than 2 lakhs a year. I mean, I could go into the math, into the arithmetic of how I arrived at these figures, but you could do it yourself if I take five people to a family. And if I have, say, 250 million families, you know where I will arrive at. Traditional affordable housing solutions have focused on government-created social housing, which has been expensive, and often led to social deterioration for communities. Haven't you seen those buildings where, monies have been spent, several lakhs and crores of rupees, and no one stays there? Finally, the guy will go down to the Jhampadpatti out there and stay, while the fifth floor of the seventh floor of that high rise that Ashok Lal is telling you not to build will be rented out by this guy for whom it was actually built, or in whose benefit and favor the house stands, the flat stands on that fifth or seventh or eighth floor of what is considered a housing scheme for the poor. So what should India be doing? India has to explore other ways, and this is where I wanted to have your moment or your attention for the next 3-4 minutes. An incremental approach. Normally we will say incremental approaches are not good, but here I'm saying an incremental approach where the urban poor are involved in constructing their own homes slowly over time can reduce housing costs for the government while giving community members a decent say in designing their own residences. This could be started in informal settlements, for example, or slums in cities that have already been regularized. If I take a city like mine, Bangalore, well, we have 2,000 slums, but the Slum Development Board officially recognizes no more than about 380 or 400 slum settlements. So there is a story that we need to explore, or you need to explore as you go along. Numerous examples from across the world show us that government-supported incremental construction with meaningful participation, of course, from the people for who you're building, can create dignified and sound and affordable housing for such deserving communities. There's another guy called Laurie Trevor from Montreal who was with us recently on a Prem Jain colloquium, must have been the last month end, who had the experience of working with some of the barrios in Chile and in Colombia, and the favelas in Rio de Janeiro. And he was telling us that the barrio program in Chile, for instance, was a national initiative. Of course, Chile is much smaller than India is, we all know that. The point is that they took community programs, talked to all the stakeholders. The government subsidized the housing costs for only about an equivalent of 1 lakh rupees. This was done in 2004 or 5. That is all they gave them as money and said, look, you build what you can at the very basics of the house. Over the next few years, you see what you want to do with your earnings to add to the home. And that means, like Ashok Lal said, don't go high rise. People among the poor do not like to lead lives in stacked homes. If there is a way of, therefore, converting first these slum settlements in cities like Bangalore or Mumbai, or even Dehradun, which is extremely slum dense, for a city of no more than, I think, about 600, it must be about 260 square kilometers or so. It has about 22 or 24 slums. I used to live in Dehradun for some years in the 90s. And then decided to take up one such program on a slum settlement, the largest slum settlement in Dehradun called Gandhigram. And we brought some change. We didn't make the impact that I'd like to have made, but we did make change. Now, the point that we should sort of, think about together as young architects, young engineers, probably even MBAs, is that if you took it incrementally, the components that will get created with the little bit of money that the government can give that such a person or such a family will make for 1/2 of a house. That's typically the most difficult for a family to provide for itself. Families then will incrementally design and build the rest of their homes over time and with their own money. We don't have to worry about that. And if today India continues to have every third urban citizen, the guy who comes and delivers things from Flipkart to Dunzo, who lives in a slum settlement, it is because somewhere in the last 50 years, my generation or Ashok Lal's generation failed you all. If there is a way of changing this, you need to see how we bring such change. I'd like to think if there are leaders of the Indian Green Building Council as well as of the CII present here, that they should be inspired by this idea. How can, for example, the Green Business Center commission an agency like the Prem Jain Memorial Trust or some other such agency, invite people like Ashok Lal to serve as a think tank for a proposal where we present, we as IGBC or CII presents to the government at the center and at the state level such an idea, and also offers the methodology of approach to be established for costs and process protocols. Architect Kirti Shah, who is also one of the speakers we will have in one of these sessions of the Prem Jain Memorial Trust soon, worked as a team. I was part of it. Shankar from Trivandrum was part of it, another distinguished architect who has also been on a memorial lecture or some such for the Memorial Trust recently. Worked in the northern provinces of Vavuniya, Jaffna, Trincomalee, and one more part of northern Sri Lanka for designing simple modular options for people who built 50,000 homes under a program that the Ministry of External Affairs, MEA of the Government of India, offered for the shall we say, conflict afflicted, I can't say war afflicted, in those northern parts of Sri Lanka. So why can't we take something like that here and say, hey, this is all I can give you, make a certain kind of a card, we give them basic plans, they build the basic shell, and then they decide, well, you can go away, I will know what to do with the plans that you have given me, I will build it my way. I'll stop here at 6:07. There are 2 or 3 questions. Arunashish Maiti wants to know, Ashok, he wants to know how steel and cement are responsible for emitting more CO2. Arunashish, I don't think you should be asking this question of Ashok Lal today. It's in a slightly larger context. Please go back to all this wonderful archived material that we have at the Prem Jain Memorial Trust's website. Look for Green No, and you will see all those archived videos. You will get your answers if you searched enough. Bhavya Malhotra. If we have to focus on compact G+4 layouts, then how can we follow transit-oriented, TOD simultaneously? That is, Ashok, to you.
Yeah.
She's saying, if it is alongside the metro, how on earth do I get to doing low-rise? Any questions?
The idea about transit-oriented development is that you should bring as many people who will need the use of the metro system or the rapid transit system as close as possible to that rapid transit system. That's the objective. It's not that you must build high-rise. You must bring as many people as close as possible to that.
No, her question is one on the logistics of land to ratio to.
No. Let me explain.
Go.
When you build small homes, the density is very high. What is happening is, what developers are doing is that they are taking the city for a ride. They are saying, we'll build 20 stories high, 3 BHK. Those guys don't use the metro. So it's not serving the objective. But you can accommodate the same number of people that you get in a 3 large BHK kind of a development.
I'm with you.
Big FSI, in 4, 5, let us say 6 stories.
Sure.
But that the objective has to be served. Those who need and will depend on the transit system should live in walking distance of it, closest to it. That is what you have to do.
I get that. Well, back on air conditioning, let me give you another figure, which will startle you all. And the figure won't be any different in Delhi or in Mumbai or in, say, Pune. I'll give you my figures from Bangalore. Today, like I said, that we have about 1.2 billion TR, and I gave you a figure for one shall we say, mall of 800,000 square feet. What I didn't tell you is that Bangalore today has a daily drinking water demand of 132 crore liters. We are about 1 crore people, 10 million people, and we have, at say, about 130 liters per person. We got 130 crore liters, and officially, I can tell you that Kaveri or the Bangalore Water Supply Board does offer that much as water. Where is the catch? By official admission from the Water Supply Board, we lose about 40%, and therefore 50 crore liters, 500 million liters of water is lost in leaks and thefts every day. Water that has been paid for by the state government or by the water supply board or whatever. Now, the bigger and more startling, story or aspect of this all is that air conditioning alone, and there isn't any verified data for this available, and we are trying to see if we can get to establish that. Just air conditioning, chiller plants, and water consumed per day is about 45 to 50 crore liters. It is not recorded anywhere, as I said. And most such buildings cannot get municipal grid water or water from Kaveri or the water supply board or the water utility. And so what do? They claim water from the ground. And today in Bangalore, we have water available at 1,500 feet. You can only talk meters like you do in Ahmedabad. Bangalore is now talking about having tube wells and not just bore wells. So you've got this 500 million liters that is needed to keep your buildings air conditioned if you are centrally air conditioned. Think about that. I don't want to say more today. We have had a lovely session with Ashok Lal, always memorable, and it's always such a pleasure learning from him. Ashoka, you and I will have to do one more session on affordable housing in the context actually of not just going low rise, but incremental housing in a way that we do not depend upon the government, and we give this say and voice and to decide, to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
To people who are going
That's a very interesting topic which I've studied a great deal.
Wonderful.
And yes, it's important to find the right kind of solution for that.
Right.
And we can discuss it another time. But I just want to respond very, very briefly to the person who asked about embodied energy of steel and cement.
Right.
If to produce steel, you need a lot of energy. It's common sense, right? You need a lot of energy to produce steel. You need even more energy to produce aluminum, and a lot of energy to produce glass, and you need a lot of energy to produce stainless steel. 65% of the embodied energy of buildings today in cities is accounted for by cement and steel itself. So if you have a building system which utilizes cement and steel very efficiently or uses less of it, then you're doing the right thing. So focus on that.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Payal Jain, for being a very quiet and strong pillar of support for whatever we are trying to push as frontiers of learning at the Prem Jain Memorial Trust. Thank you, Sandeep Narayan, for making this happen this week. Like she said, you are the champion, actually, for having driven this today, the prime mover. Well, what can I say? Mrs. Renu Jain, I know you will not speak. I know you're there listening to all of us. I know you're a great support for your daughter too, apart from for a lot of other people. And as they say, just smaran of somebody's name can keep that person's soul and memory alive for generations after. And I'm very happy to see that the Prem Jain Memorial Trust constantly is talking about him, having people reflect. To have had Ashok get emotional at the beginning of this session was very touching. Thank you, Ashok, for sharing the fact that you were probably among the first set of students of Dr. Prem Jain. Was it the early 1970s that you were with him?
That's right.
And students, you heard him. What is interesting was, he said that I did not learn things from a textbook. I learned from the way Dr. Prem Jain spoke and shared of his experiences. To all of your faculty mentors, faculty leaders at MITE, Institute of School of Architecture and the College of Engineering here in Bangalore, and to students from the other schools who are present, thank you so much. Grateful to you all for having partnered this week of the World Green Building Week, or whatever that celebrations are going across the country. That's all we have from here at the studios of PJMT. We'll come back and be with you tomorrow in the evening, and you know the calendar, and we'd like to see that you learn as much as you did today from the speaker tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Recording can be switched off.